You will recall that Governor Rick Snyder, when Benton Harbor, which is predominantly black, and on the other side of the river is, I'm forgetting the name of the city, but in any case, there's another city on the other side of the river that's predominantly white, and Benton Harbor had this park which was on the border of Lake Michigan that abutted a golf course, and the golf course had been coveting this park for a long time. The golf course was a white membership golf course. Governor Snyder and Benton Harbor was going down in flames because the industrial base of America has been destroyed by 30 years of free trade and Reaganomics. And so he passed a law. He got a law passed by the Republicans in the House and Senate in Michigan, saying that he could undo democracy. He could fire the mayor and the city council, and he could put in a little dictator. He called them emergency managers, and he put an emergency manager into Benton Harbor. Now, this park was given to the city by a family in 1909 in the name of their young daughter who had died. It had been her favorite place. They owned the land. They gave it to the city in perpetuity on the condition that the park remain a public park in perpetuity. But that didn't matter to the emergency manager. He sold it to the golf course anyway, to pay part of the bill for the city, right? Well, now, then the people of Michigan got together and they said, this emergency manager stuff, this sucks. This is no good. And it was put on the ballot as a referendum, and it passed. And so the law got knocked down by the people. So Governor Snyder and his Republicans passed a new law as part of an appropriations bill that couldn't be overturned by referendum by virtue of a kind of a loophole in the Michigan Constitution. So they were back in the emergency manager business. So now Detroit's in trouble. And so they said, hey, you know, Detroit's got some assets that we'd love to privatize. The art museum, the water system. And so now, in preparation for privatizing the water system, selling it off, as is happening in communities all over the world, frankly. The largest company in the world that manages these systems is out of France. But Detroit residents, Kevin Orr is the emergency manager in Detroit, and there's about 150,000 Detroit residents who are late on their water bills right now, because there's no money and because Republicans in Congress, 3 days after Christmas last year, cut off long-term unemployment benefits. So you've got all these people who have got nothing. They can't even afford to pay their water bill. And he has ordered that $1,500 to $3,000 a week be shut off. And, you know, the more that they shut off, the more they can write off that debt, and the more they can elevate the value of the water system to the point where they can get a decent price for it from a private corporation. And C. Edmund Wright is on the line with us, conservative commentator, contributor to Breitbart and The American Thinker, author of WTF, How Karl Rove and the Establishment Lost Again. His website, cedmundwright, WRIGHT.com. And welcome back.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here. And Edmund with a U, by the way.
There you go. E-D-M-U-N-D. Edmund, I'm assuming I should call you that, right? Or Mr. Wright. How can you defend the Snyder administration doing what, A, the people of the state of Michigan said explicitly in an election they didn't want done, and B, how could any conservative defend the privatization of the commons? It seems like the sort of thing that would make Dwight Eisenhower or even Richard Nixon puke.
Well, a couple of different issues there. First, as far as the town across the river, I mean, don't know anything about that. Don't know if I knew the merits of that case, where it would come down.
Well, this was the first one, was Benton Harbor.
You know, I mean, again, the way you couched it, it certainly sounds like a bad deal. You may have couched it correctly, or I don't know. You know, so that's a separate issue. But I don't think any of the things you brought up are really why. I mean, Detroit is a mess, and I would obviously quibble with the fact, well, more than quibble, that it was Reaganomics and free trade that caused it. There's communities that are booming, making automobiles that aren't union and aren't in Detroit, and so I would say Detroit's problem.
The union is not the problem, sir. The union has negotiated $14 an hour entry-level wages for the new auto workers. The problem is that our cars are being made overseas. We did away with tariffs. We used, before Reagan came into office, we had an average 32% tariff on everything coming into this country. Now it's 2.1%.
The problem is what you do with a tariff, by the way, is you shift some of the pain. We're not all consumers. We're not all just consumers. We're not all just workers.
No, I know that. That's why this country averaged roughly a 30% tariff from the George Washington administration. You will recall the first import tariffs were proposed by Alexander Hamilton in 1791 and put into law in 1793 from the George Washington administration until the Reagan administration. And it was really Clinton who dismantled most of them when he signed NAFTA, GATT, and created the WTO. But Reagan began that process. But that's a whole other argument. My objection is that there are some things that are the appropriate province of government, and those are the things that have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the natural monopolies, and water should be among them, and that people should not have their water turned off just because they're poor.
Well, and to understand that right now the system is not private, and I understand you're saying they're trying to clean up the books so that they can get a bigger price. I don't know whether that's true or not. Even if it is somewhat true, that had nothing to do with where we are now.
Well, it is where we are now.
I'm sure there are a percentage of the Detroit citizens who absolutely would do everything they could to pay their bills and can't. I'm going to tell you, we all see enough of Detroit from videos and on the Pawn Shop Show and everything else, all these glimpses of Detroit. A lot of us, Tom, are just not going to believe that these are 100% victims that can't do anything about it.
The city raised $1 billion in bonds. The city sold $1 billion worth of bonds back when the city was run by the mayor and the city council in order to modernize the water system, put it back into order, and provide subsidies to the people who can't afford to buy water. The emergency manager decreed that $575 million of that $1 billion would go to the banks for interest outs, because there were the bond was to replace the loans. The banks could have waited, but instead of having the banks wait, the emergency manager decided the banks are going to get the money, or half the money, and the other half of the money is going to be used to clean this thing up so we can sell it off. I think this is criminal.
Well, first of all, I don't know if the banks were owed the money and they're going to need these banks to fund the next project. I mean, that could have been self-defense. But the other thing is the Detroit water and sewer system is apparently $5 billion in the hole, not $1 billion.
Right.
So that $1 billion wasn't going to do it anyway. $5 billion, and Detroit's not even that big of a city anymore. I mean, this is an unsustainable disaster. Obviously, I don't take pleasure in anyone, having any water or utility cut off. I've had stuff cut off in my life in the past, and it's not fun. But having said that, I mean, there's going to have to be some tough decisions made around Detroit and the state of Michigan. I mean,
but shouldn't they be made by the people, the elected officials, rather than a lawyer from a vulture company hired by the governor?
Well, you try to make these private companies sinister. Sometimes a private industry could come in and actually do a much more efficient job. I mean, part of Michigan and
no, I'm not buying that. I'm sorry. I've seen the defense industry all these years. I look at the bloat in the health insurance industry. We got the most expensive health care in the world with the lowest results in the developed world. We've got a military-industrial complex.
A lot of government perversion in health insurance. It has been for decades.
No. The problem is with your health insurance company. Anyhow, see Edmund Wright. You can read all about it over at CEDMUNDWRIGHT.com. Thank you, sir, for dropping by.
Yes, sir. Anytime.